Hello everyone, I wanted to make a quick video, not too long one today, about the difference between radical acceptance and unconditional acceptance, since I think this is a really good question that I get asked, not every day, but pretty frequently, and I think it's a very important topic to cover because radical acceptance, usually for OCD, in the way it's explained, will really just not do obsessive compulsive disorder sufferers justice, because they tend to use it as another type of a mantra to get rid of their suffering. So I'm going to go into the differences between the two, how they work on a therapeutic kind of level in the sense of changing your belief systems, and why radical acceptance really just won't cut it in many ways for OCD sufferers. Before I go any further, please subscribe, hit that like button down below, look for that What's Up link, which is a great feature that we have now. You can annoy the hell out of Phil, ask him a bunch of really tough questions, drive him crazy, and then we can get you guys in right away. Like I said, we have the webinars every 8:30 p.m. UK times, which is great. And like I said, once I know more about the conference, I just woke up, we will. I'm not trying to squeeze a video in before I start doing one-on-ones. Before we go any further with that, I'll let you guys know. Okay, so radical acceptance and unconditional acceptance are very different. And the reason why they're different is because when you look at radical acceptance, and the individuals who talk about radical acceptance, which are very well-intentioned, meaning individuals, I always tell people, these individuals are not trying to, harm us in a way where people are like, oh, why are they giving us the wrong information? Because it's frustrating when you're stuck with OCD, but that's not actually what's going on. They just, when you've never had OCD, it's not easy to understand it, right? So we know that. But when you look at what radical acceptance is, there's usually a bunch of playlists that come up. So in these playlists, there's a bunch of statements, radical acceptance statements. Now, I was given a good amount of these. I remember one OCD specialist who gave me a list of radical acceptance statements to say back to my fears. Now, that was a problem because I was actually talking back to my fears. And we know with OCD that becomes a really big problem. We don't want to be talking back to our fears because that doesn't lead us anywhere good. So we have to be aware of that. The other difference between radical acceptance and unconditional acceptance is that radical acceptance is the opposite. Okay, so radical is synonymous with quick. When you think about something that's radical, it's fast acting, it's aggressive, right? Think about calls someone a radical, like that person's a radical. What does that mean? That means they're an extremist. It means they're quick to make decisions on impulse. They act in an extreme manner. So by definition, the term radical can't fit unconditional acceptance, because unconditional is synonymous with taking time and really getting underneath your core fears. So that's the biggest difference between the two philosophies of that. Now, radical acceptance comes from ACT, and ACT is just acceptance commitment therapy. So there's a lot of crossover between the principles of any type of acceptance. The difference is how it's explained. So if you're working with an individual who's applying ACT in the sense to your OCD fears, but they're not looking at your worst case scenarios, they're not looking at the deepest parts of your fear patterns, you're probably not going to make the progress you're looking for. And the reason why is because you're so stuck on talking away your thoughts. And that's not going to do you any good. Which many people, they struggle with that. I struggled with that for a long time. Self-reassurance is hard to catch, because you're trying to make progress, but you're still caught in that automatic doom loop, as I call it, where you're having intrusive thoughts, images, sensation, urges. It's all of them. It's not just intrusive thoughts. It's only 25% of how intrusiveness plays. It's actually much less than 25% because you have intrusive memories. You have all sorts of different presentations of pain. So, intrusive thoughts are just a small piece of the OCD pie. And in many cases, many people don't have intrusive thoughts that much. They're much more feeling-based or memory-based. So it's not as simple. And that throws people off because they go to get help. And the individual will say, well, do you have intrusive thoughts? And the person says, no. And they say, well, yeah, I don't really know if you have OCD then. Well, that can't be accurate because it's way more than just intrusive thoughts. So it is important to cover that. But, the thing is with the three-letter words like ACT and ERP and stuff like that, they sound really legit, almost as if a badge of honor. when I talk about trauma, but the problem is they're not anything new. Facing your fears behaviorally and just working on things in an acceptance manner has been around since any type of philosophy. Eastern philosophy, Western philosophy, not just Stoicism, it's also Epicureanism, it's also Taoism and Buddhism, it's also just anything, skepticism, any of the Greco-Roman philosophies, pessimism. You're looking at life. I mean, if you really look at like Arthur Schopenhauer and you look at pessimism, they're really looking at life in an acceptance manner. They're just looking at it through a pessimistic view. I agree very much with the existentialists that life has no universal purpose. That doesn't make me depressed or sad or anxious or anything like that. It would be cool if there was a purpose universally, but more than likely, probably not. So yeah, so it has to do with the perception on the realities, right? So this stuff has been around for a while. But what happens is, people will say, I'm in ACT right now. I'm getting ACT therapy. And it sounds great. And then people, they hold that in a very high regard, right? And they say, I'm in ACT therapy, which is great. But the problem is they're not actually looking at worst case scenarios, which is a problem. Because when you're looking at worst case scenarios, you're becoming more comfortable with that outcome. And remember, acceptance doesn't mean agreement, which is also the biggest problem when people are breaking down acceptance-based fears. Whatever their fears may be, whether it's harm OCD or POCD or anything like that. And then that's where people really get themselves tripped up. So, the biggest problems, I'll kind of do a summary because I'm getting close back to my house. I did a small loop today, is that radical acceptance and unconditional acceptance have layovers. But unconditional acceptance is much more difficult because it's unconditional. When radical acceptance is explained, it's usually explained as in you're radically accepting something in the moment. Well, that goes and negates the purpose of acceptance that you can't accept. So that's not really going to happen. And it's difficult to see that unless you're around OCD all day long and you see how sneaky we are with reassurance and you see how sneaky we are with venting and everything like that. So it does take a good amount of time to get underneath those fears. It took me, my sensory motor fear took me a couple of years. Body dysmorphia took a couple of years. Physical symptoms of anxiety took more than a couple of years. So, and nothing I did that was radical in the moment of that. Anytime I tried to radically push away something, it ended up coming back and biting harder. And that ended up being a really, really big problem. So it didn't do for me what I wanted, but it gave me the illusion that it was. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Remember, look for the WhatsApp link down below, and we can get you in right away. But yeah, if you're trying to radically accept a POCD fear or an HOCD fear or something like that, the chances are you're not going to make that progress. You're thinking, I got cats today. Hey, guys. I want to get cats, but I think Milo and Daisy are too stupid to understand. Every time I see cats, I almost rip my arm off. Like I said, 8:30 p.m. UK time for those webinars, and you just direct message Phil in the WhatsApp link or the email, phil@ocdrecovery.com. Have a good one, everyone.